the first thing they heard wasn't his name, it was the metallic echo of a door built to erase sound itself. Inside ADX Florence, even noise is a privilege. Footsteps disappear into concrete. Voices dissolve before they reach the next cell. But on the night inmate number 44821 arrived, the silence felt heavier than the chains locked around his waist. It wasn't fear. It was the architecture swallowing him whole. If stories like this fascinate you, hit subscribe, because this one only gets darker. He'd been in high-security prisons before, but nothing looked like this. Nothing felt like this. The hallway leading to his ADX cell was a tunnel of reinforced concrete, fluorescent lights casting a cold, bluish tint over every surface. The air didn't move. Even from the escorting guards, there was no small talk, no instructions, only the clack of their boots and the hum of the automated doors sliding open one by one. Each door was controlled remotely. No keys. No jangling. No chance. Every 5 steps, the world sealed shut behind him. The architects in the early 90s had a vision: design a prison so secure that escape became a mathematical impossibility. They succeeded, but they also built something else. A space where a man could lose track of days, thoughts, and eventually, himself. The guards stopped at a door that looked no different from the dozens they'd passed. A window barely wider than a wall, its edge sat at eye level, too narrow to see anything but a sliver of sky and the sun's position twice a day. When the steel panel slid open, he stepped inside. No bars. No open space. Just a concrete box with rounded edges to prevent self-harm, a stainless steel sink welded into the wall, and a bed poured from the same gray material as the floor. The architects had designed everything with a single purpose: limit contact, limit movement, limit risk. But what no blueprint accounted for was the price inmates would pay in silence. His cell door sealed shut. Then the real sound hit him: nothing. He pressed his palm against the wall. It was thick enough to muffle even a scream. Next to the door, a slot for food trays sat closed, controlled from a distant station he would never see. For the next 23 hours a day, this space would be his entire universe. In the hallway, another inmate banged on a door, 3 sharp hits, the universal signal for "I'm still here." The blows echoed for a moment before the concrete drank them dry. Number 44821 listened, hoping the noise would continue. It didn't. Silence returned like a blanket. Over the next few days, the architecture began doing what it was built to do: isolate every sense. He noticed conversations didn't travel. Even the guards' radios sounded distorted, like they were underwater. His window slit showed only sky, no yard, no fences, no other humans. Meals arrived without warning, and the tray slot snapped shut before he could catch a glimpse of the hand that delivered it. Time became abstract. Voices shifted into whispers he wasn't sure were real. Shadows stretched longer than they should. Memory and imagination blurred at the edges. One afternoon, he saw something that broke the monotony. A small movement outside his door, barely noticeable, but enough to jolt him upright. It wasn't a guard. Guards walked with purpose. This was slower, hesitant. Someone was standing just out of view. A soft click echoed in the lock. Not the usual automated hum. Something else. Something manual. Then a voice, low, unfamiliar, and too close to the door. "You're going to want to stay awake tonight." Before he could respond, the footsteps faded, swallowed by the concrete labyrinth. And for the first time since arriving, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt threatening. The warning replayed in his head long after the footsteps vanished. "You're going to want to stay awake tonight." In a place where contact was nearly impossible, where every angle of the prison was designed to keep inmates separate, the message shouldn't have been possible. That alone made it dangerous. ADX wasn't built like other prisons. Here, pressure wasn't applied through violence or gangs, it came through isolation, routines, and the architecture itself. Even rumors traveled differently. They slipped through ventilation systems, bounced off concrete, and arrived in fragments. It was enough to unsettle anyone trapped long enough with their own thoughts. That night, the usual rhythm of the facility shifted. Dinner arrived early. The tray slot snapped shut faster than usual. The hallway lights dimmed a few minutes sooner than he expected. Something was happening behind the scenes, something the prison wasn't broadcasting. He sat on the concrete bed, eyes fixed on the door. Every few minutes, a shadow moved across the bottom seam. ADX cells don't allow for easy observation, but he knew the guards were doing more rounds than usual. Their boots struck the floor with more energy, more purpose. It didn't feel like a routine check. Isolation does strange things to the brain. The longer he watched that seam of light, the more he wondered if he imagined the warning. Maybe there was no voice. Maybe the architecture was already working its way into him, compressing time, scrambling perception, bending reality. But then, another sound. 3 knocks. Not from him. Not from his corridor neighbor. A pattern he didn't recognize. He rose slowly. The knocks repeated, softer this time, almost cautious. Nobody at ADX communicated without reason. He placed his ear against the cold door. A voice, a whisper, "Transfer, tonight." His pulse spiked. Transfers were rare. Emergency transfers? Almost unheard of. The prison was designed to contain everyone, no matter how volatile. The architecture reduced risk so much that movement wasn't necessary. So if they were moving someone tonight, it wasn't for the inmate's safety. It was for everyone else's. Boots thundered in the corridor. A command barked. More automated locks snapped open in sequence. He stepped back as the building itself seemed to tense. The atmosphere changed, thick, charged. Even from inside his cell, he could feel the shift. ADX was built to separate people, but tension found a way to crawl through concrete. He listened as a cell door down the hall opened. The sound of restraints clicking into place echoed sharply. Whoever they were extracting didn't go quietly. A muffled voice rose in protest, swallowed almost immediately by the thick walls but loud enough to make him hold his breath. Then, for the first time, he heard something he didn't expect in ADX, a struggle. It wasn't loud, but it was real. A scuffle of boots, the pain grunt of a man whose world had been reduced to 8 concrete steps and a steel door. Another guard shouted. A metal object hit the floor. Then silence, fast, heavy, unnatural. He pressed his hand against the wall again, feeling the vibrations fade. Minutes passed. The locks cycled again. The escort moved away, leaving the corridor colder than before. Whatever happened out there was over, but the architecture did its job. It concealed the details while revealing just enough to make paranoia bloom. He returned to the bed, mind racing. Someone had warned him. Someone had knocked. Someone had risked breaking the unwritten ADX rule: do not reach for another inmate. Ever. But why him? Why tonight? What was he supposed to stay awake for? Hours later, when the lights outside his cell dimmed fully, he finally understood the purpose of the warning. Because when everything went dark, the prison didn't feel stable anymore. It felt like something was shifting, beneath the walls, behind the doors, and deep inside the design itself. Something the architects never intended. The darkness didn't come all at once. It bled slowly into the corridor, swallowing the last traces of fluorescent light until the only glow left came from the faint LCD panel above his sink. ADX cells weren't supposed to go fully dark, too many risks, too much uncertainty. But tonight, something was off. The architecture, usually precise and predictable, felt unstable. He sat upright, listening. Concrete carries vibration more honestly than sound. In the silence, he felt a faint tremor travel through the floor, soft, rhythmic, like machinery working overtime somewhere deep inside the facility. Not an earthquake. Not a generator. Something mechanical, something hidden. Then came the second tremor. Stronger. He stood, bracing himself against the wall. ADX was engineered to withstand explosions, riots, even coordinated attacks. Nothing inside was meant to move. But this vibration was deliberate, controlled, like a system running diagnostics after years of neglect. A memory surfaced from the orientation packet he'd half ignored on arrival. The entire prison is controlled through a series of automated nodes and mechanical locks, some buried dozens of feet below ground. If one node failed, the rest compensated. But if two failed? The lights flickered sharply. A lock somewhere disengaged with a metallic shift he felt in his ribs. Then, silence again. His breathing shortened. He wasn't afraid of the dark. He was afraid of the unknown breathing inside it. A faint shuffling rose from the corridor. Not guards. Guards walked with authority. This was tentative, uneven, like someone feeling their way along the wall. He stepped back, heart pounding. A silhouette passed his door, barely visible in the thin spill of emergency light. For a moment, the figure paused, turning toward him. Still awake, a voice whispered, the same voice that warned him earlier. He didn't speak. He didn't know what to ask. You weren't supposed to hear the transfer, the voice continued. But the system glitched. Doors misfired. Misfired? In ADX? The architecture was built to be infallible. The figure exhaled shakily. The design was perfect on paper. But isolation like this, it doesn't just break inmates. It breaks the people running the place. Mistakes pile up. Someone tried to fix the problem, but messed with the wrong controls. He processed every word slowly. A system glitch. Doors misfiring. That tremor in the walls. Is someone loose? He finally whispered. A long pause. Not loose, the voice said. Just awake. Before he could respond, another tremor rolled through the building, this time accompanied by the unmistakable clank of a heavy mechanical lock disengaging. The silhouette stiffened. They're testing overrides manually now, the voice murmured. Trying to force the systems back online. He stepped closer to the door. What does that mean for us? It means the architecture's doing exactly what they built it to do, isolate every threat. Even the ones they created themselves. The footsteps retreated, fading into the corridor's darkness. He stood alone again, but the fear had changed shape. It wasn't about who might be in the hallway anymore, it was about the realization that the very design meant to control danger could become dangerous when strained. Minutes later, the lights snapped back to life. The locks cycled in rapid succession. Emergency protocols ended as abruptly as they started. Guards flooded the corridor, their tone sharper than usual. Orders flew. Someone shouted about a system override. Someone else cursed about a mechanical failure in the lower tiers. But no one mentioned the whisperer. No one mentioned the warning. No one acknowledged the corridor going dark. They sealed every door again. Reset every panel. Restored every illusion of control. He lay back on the concrete bed, staring at the ceiling. The truth hit him harder than any threat from an inmate ever could. ADX wasn't just a prison, it was a machine. A machine designed to squeeze every human flaw into silence. A machine that worked, until it didn't. And when it faltered, even for a second, the people inside felt the consequences in ways the architects never anticipated. The lights above him buzzed softly, returning to their usual sterile glow. The darkness was gone, but the unease lingered. He finally understood the real impact of the architecture. It didn't just confine bodies. It reshaped minds, guards, inmates, everyone trapped inside the design. If you think this story was intense, the next one will leave you speechless. Subscribe for more true crime stories that'll keep you on the edge of your seat.